the Lone Ranger. Silver!
This is a remarkable story in South Vietnam in the late 1960s. Two classmates in the Army in combat. Dick Lund was the pilot of a Huey medevac chopper. As they loaded the wounded in battle and lifted off, he had a strange feeling and asked his co-pilot to take control as he then climbed back to where the wounded were. And he noticed that his classmate and friend, Terry Bloberger, airman, was badly wounded. Dick flew him safely to medical assistance and saved his life. Terry just learned about this after I phoned him 2 days ago. Terry owes his life to the valiant efforts in a high-risk mission to his classmate and friend, Dick Lund, U.S. Army pilot.
Homemade chicken noodle soup and homemade black bean soup. And for the black bean soup, you probably want to put a little sour cream and chives. And then there's cheese, French bread, and conventional French bread. And then you can either grab some berries or later on have some berries and either like a pound cake or angel fruit cake.
Hi, I'm Dick Lund, class of '65. After I graduated from high school, went to college at San Mateo. Did that for 2 years, went to San Jose State for 1 semester, and then I enlisted in the Army, flew medical evacuation helicopters in Vietnam, was in the military for about 2.5 years and got an early out as the Vietnam War winded down, then went to work for the Federal Aviation Administration and federal job in several jobs in air traffic and flight standards, and did that until 2009 and retired, and been playing with my grandkids ever since and loving it.
Can you tell me a quick story about a classmate that you interacted with in Vietnam and what happened?
Terry Bloberger. He and I were pretty good friends in high school, and when I was at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, I met him, and he told me he was training to be a medic, and next time I saw him, he was being loaded onto the helicopter that I was flying, and we evacuated him to a medical facility, and I never saw him after that.
So you basically helped save his life.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
I'm Ken Cassell, and I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been here for about 20 years. After high school, I went to Brigham Young University for a year, and then I went on a Mormon mission for 2 years to England. Came back, went to BYU for another year, and married my wife. I've been married for it'll be 46 years in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And we have 4 kids. But back to my history. She took a teaching job at Salt Lake, so Brigham Young's about 40 miles south, so I transferred to University of Utah and graduated there in 1971. Took a job in Santa Clara, California as a cost accountant at Owens Corning Fiberglass. Was there for 2 years, and then I spent the rest of my time in another 18 years in Silicon Valley. I did accounting stuff. I was a CFO of startups for a long time, and then I had my brother-in-law in Salt Lake. My wife's from Salt Lake, so my brother-in-law offered me a job with him in his startup, and that was a object lesson in never go to work with a relative. So that lasted about 18 months, did a little consulting. Then I hooked up with a software startup, worked for them, or I was part of the ownership. Worked there for about 10 years. We sold out, and I did consulting. In 2008, the consulting business sort of fell on its rear. So I did a career change, and I became I'm on the faculty of Western Governors University. It's an online university,
Right.
and I teach accounting to graduate students. So I've been doing that for 6 years. So I have 4 kids. I have 10 grandkids,
Wow, congratulations.
and so half of them are here and half of them are elsewhere.
And your identical twin, Ken, where is he?
I am the identical twin Ken.
Yeah.
So my identical
And
twin
Keith, rather, yes.
is he's had a graphic design firm
Okay.
in Durham, North Carolina for
Okay.
quite a while, and I think he's coming to the reunion.
Great.
His wife has grandkids in Palo Alto, so
Okay.
gives him an opportunity to fly across the country. And then I also am an author. So
Ah,
I've written 16 fantasy and science fiction books. I self-publish them under the name Guy and Teebs.
okay.
So they're on sale on Amazon,
And who reads these?
and people who like fantasy and science fiction,
Okay.
sword and sorcery stuff. This one particularly is a space science fiction one.
Okay.
I did this one.
How many books have you written?
16.
Congratulations again.
I'm going to have 3 more. I write real fast, so I've been doing it for about 6 years.
And who publishes it?
I do.
Your own publishing.
I'm my own publishing. I do the covers. I do the insides. I get them ready to be ebooks. Most of the sales are ebooks on Amazon.
Okay.
So that's my paying hobby.
Good for you.
So
Thank
that's about what I'm doing.
Anybody you miss in the class or think about? You wonder what happened to them?
No. Sorry.
That's a good question.
That's an old, 50 years ago is a
Long
different
time.
Yeah.
Good. And you've watched some of the videos?
I've watched all the videos, Tom.
You like that?
Yeah, it's good. I get to, it's interesting to see what people have done, obviously.
Great.
So,
Well, thank you very much.
there you go.
My name is Dick Galbraith, and after graduating from menlo-atherton High School, I went to Brigham Young University for 2 years, and then left there for 2 years on a full-time mission for the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to London, England for 2 years. Came back, finished up my last 2 years at BYU, and then went back to the Chicago area and got a master's and a PhD in experimental psychology from Northwestern University. And came back to BYU and taught for 38 years. My specialty is children's memory and intelligence and the cognitive development of children. And it was a great time. I enjoyed, loved teaching and research, a lot of family factors that deal with children's intellectual development. Also during this time, I, with an old high school friend from Woodside High School and college roommate Tom Dixon, we formed a company that you may have heard about called Blend Tech. We make high-performance blenders for smoothies, milkshakes. We're used by such companies as Starbucks, Baskin-Robbins, Jamba Juice, and you'll see us in retail stores like Costco and Bed Bath & Beyond. And that's been a lot of fun. I also, during this time, have made some resources available for people who like to study the scriptures. A website called scriptures.byu.edu. It allows people to look at the scriptures in light of all the prophets. And we have about 125,000 users worldwide, and it's all free of charge. And it's also an app both for Android and for Apple iOS called LDS Scripture Citation Index. It allows people to study the scriptures, again, in context with the prophets and apostles. 1995, let's move back up. I married a delightful woman who met in there, Sandy Boyer, and she's my wife. We have 5 children, and we have 1 grandchild who's an absolute apple of her eye, and I love her, every bit of her. My wife and a grandchild. I Do want to mention Tom was very gracious to allow me to talk about this. I'm just going to tell you something that I think is important. It gives you some idea of what I'm doing now. In 1995, we had a very unfortunate circumstance in my family where my mother, who was extraordinarily fearful of ending up in a vegetative state, she'd had friends that were comatose, and she got a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. And in September of 1995, she took her life. And it was a great loss for my father. And because we had known Mom was had suicidal tendencies, we had a watch on her constantly, but my father fell asleep during the afternoon. He was narcoleptic, and she took her life. Unfortunately for my father, the coroner's office in Santa Clara County was also under grand jury investigation for incompetence. And for whatever reason, they declared my mother's death a homicide. And my father was arrested at gunpoint in front of his grandchildren, handcuffed behind his back. He had no joints in his shoulders from rheumatoid arthritis, brutally handled by the police, and charged with the murder of my mother. Well, at this point, the Palo Alto Police Department got again involved and destroyed evidence. The coroner's office to this date has lost all the major pieces of my mother's autopsy. No photographs could be found, and all the evidence had been lost. Nonetheless, they pursued my father, and we got a hold of the autopsy that was printed, and it was anatomically impossible, the way it was described in my mother's death. We provided the evidence to the prosecutor, and she knowingly went ahead with the case. The coroner was put on the stand. He lied. Every major marker of suicide was described to the jury as homicide. We, however, my brother and I had done, shall we say, the homework, scouring the internet for this type of, it's called ligature strangulation, suicide ligature strangulation. My mother tied a bath, a sash around her neck, and we read every book in the Stanford Medical Library of forensic pathology. And with the experts that we had, my father was found innocent at trial. And following this, we had my mother's body exhumed, flown to Salt Lake City, where the state medical examiner for Utah performed a second autopsy, at which we were present. His first comment was, "Where's the first autopsy?" Nothing had been done that he testified to. It was all a sham. We then went forward with a civil rights charge against the county of Santa Clara and the coroner, 1983 law, for those of you who are familiar, where a crime is committed under the color of law. And we also then became acquainted with the other side of the law. Not only did we have corrupt police, prosecutors, and the judge in our particular case, but then we became acquainted with federal judges who were appointed. Our first federal judge was a former lawyer for the county of Santa Clara. Our case was thrown out. During that trial, the judge was asleep through a substantial portion of it. We then went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, where some of the finest jurists heard our case. Mary Schroeder, Chief Justice, Alex Kaczynski, now the Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit, Betty Fletcher. And all three of them voted unanimously that my father's case needed to be heard, that the coroner had in fact showed reckless abandon, and the county was liable. We went back, and the county then asked for summary judgment at the Ninth Circuit. And in order to achieve that, they submitted a false affidavit where they misconstrued totally the facts of the case. The judge, who was again an appointee, and in my mind a rubber stamp for the government, threw our case out again. We went back to the Ninth Circuit a second time on summary judgment. They heard our case and said, absolutely, this case has to be heard. This is a false affidavit. And then the county of Santa Clara bound together with every other county of the state of California in what's called an en banc, E-N-B-A-N-C, appeal against us. We overcame that. And then and only then, they acknowledged that the autopsy was fraudulent and that they presented our family an apology They gave us about half of our legal bills at that time, which was over $800,000. Now, why do I bring this up? I have retired from Blendtec. I retired from BYU. My time and energy is greatly spent with my resources to train young lawyers at the Brigham Young University Law School to defend the poor, the black, the Hispanic, the elderly, against the tremendous power of the bureaucracy. If you're, the first thing they would do to my father was put him in $1 million bail. That's $100,000 non-refundable. Who has those kinds of resources? I'm a single parent family. You go to jail and you can't afford to defend yourself. So I spend a good part of my time and resources to try to help those who don't have the time, energy, and resources to defend themselves. Imagine all the people you read regularly who have been in jail for 25 years, and then only then we find DNA evidence to find that they have in fact been wrongfully incarcerated. So I may sound a little impassioned on this, but you must understand, if they did this to my father with our resources, they do it to your father, and they do it to someone else's father who does not have the same resources. I appreciate Tom coming. He's a great friend. I knew him as Beef, and I want to give a shout out to my friend Steve Holmes. I know Steve's been having some difficult times. I love my friends from high school. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Dick.
Every night I sit here by my window, staring at the lonely avenue, watching lovers holding hands and laughing, thinking about the things we used to do. Like a walk in the park, like a kiss in the dark, like a sailboat ride. What about the night we cried? Things like a lover's vow, things that we don't do now, thinking about the things we used to do. Memories are all I have to cling to, and heartaches are the friends I'm talking to. When I'm not thinking of just how much I love you, well, I'm thinking about the things we used to do. Like a walk in the park, like a kiss in the dark, like a sailboat ride. What about the night we cried? Things like lovers vow, things that we don't do now, thinking about the things we used to do. I still can hear the jukebox softly playing, and the face I see each day belongs to you. Though there's not a single sound and there's nobody else around, well, that's just me thinking about things we used to do. Like a walk in the park, like a kiss in the dark, like a sailboat ride. What about the night that we cried? Things like lovers vow, things that we don't do now, thinking about the things we used to do. And the heartaches are the friends I'm talking to.
The town I came from was quiet and small. We played in the meadows where the grass grew so tall. In summer the lilacs would grow everywhere. The laughter of children would float in the air. As I grew older, I had to roam far from my family, far from my home, into the city where lives can be spent, lost in the shadows of tar and cement. Into the city where I had my eye on all the pleasures that money can buy. Yet I can see it all so clearly now, still going on. Yes, I can see it all so clearly now, still going on. Each day I'd wake up and look up the sky. I think of the meadows where I used to lie. Then I'd remember all of it's gone. You're in the city, better push on. Get what you came for before it's too late. Get what you came for, the meadow can wait. So every night I sit alone and learn what loneliness meant. Up in my rented room above the world of tar and cement. Many years later, tired at last, I headed for home to look for my past. I looked for the meadows, there wasn't a trace. 6 lanes of highway had taken the place. Where were the lilacs and all that they meant? Nothing but acres of tar and cement. Yet I can see